my last job was in an industry with, I don't know if you can imagine more ruthless price shopping than the live event ticket industry, where everyone is out for the cheapest price. I remember sitting on a focus group and watching people who had transacted on our site within the last 12 months, and I was eager to hear their observations, what they liked. They did not remember that they had purchased with us. So just not even loyalty, no awareness. They didn't remember they had transacted. And now I work for a company called Hallow, which is a Catholic prayer app. And we get people on social media tagging us, hey, I've used your app every day for 100 days. I've used your app every day for 500 days. I have a 1,000-day prayer streak. And seeing the kind of the benefits of that are sometimes hard to quantify when you have like super loyal, super engaged users. But you can do things like events. You have online communities. There's all these little benefits of loyalty that sometimes are hard to see maybe in the bottom line, but are very real and very present. So excited to dive into loyalty with this really awesome and talented panel. Jenna Berg, VP of Brand Marketing at Motel 6, 1,500 locations around the country. And when you think of like brand slogans, brand kind of buzzwords, Motel 6, we'll leave the light on for you, I imagine is in the top 10 of kind of brand iconic lines. So super excited to have Jenna. Chaz Black, Senior Director of Local Performance Marketing at Neighborly, the largest franchisor of home service brands in the world. 19 different brands, 5,000 franchises or franchisees. Super excited to have Chaz up here. And Alex Sikkema, Head of Social at SHEIN. If you took all of the social media followers I have and added them together with SHEIN, you would have 36 million Instagram followers, and I do not have many followers. So a leading brand, leading global retailer, really excited. So as Aaron mentioned, we have a really eclectic, diverse panel, so I just want to kick off going left to right. Jenna, what does loyalty mean in your industry and for your business in particular?
I'm going to start off by saying we don't have a loyalty program. We have a customer preference program that drives loyalty. I have to say that. That's my asterisk from legal. So loyalty really, I mean, when you think of hotel space, a lot of brands have loyalty programs. We do not have a traditional loyalty program in that you get points, you can redeem those points, and you can do those stays. So when we think about loyalty, there's two different ways to quantify that. It's how often are our guests coming back, but also what is the value that we can bring them beyond just giving them free nights. So working with other partner companies, we don't offer breakfast as a hotel chain, so can we find a breakfast partner to bring that extra value in to give them something a little bit more than just the stay that they're expecting and surprise and delight them in that way. We talked a little bit earlier about going just beyond the offering and what are the things that we can do to build that around. But it is a very price-driven category. So when you're thinking through that, there's some interesting things I think we're going to get into a little bit later about how to kind of dive deep there.
Chaz?
Yeah, perfect. And loyalty has come to mean a few different things in the home services space. We have certain brands that require 80% customer retention year over year to hit our revenue goals, right? Those are huge numbers. So we think about, right, what's our offer strategy? What's our seasonality? How are we getting them to come back? But ultimately, right, product rarely trumps experience. So when I start to think about loyalty and what it means in the home service category, it really starts to boil down to reviews, right? What are people saying about your brand? Where are they posting it? Where are they putting it? Google, we still have to play the Google game, so it's critically important that, loyalty from a Google business profile perspective is getting that engagement, getting that follow-up, and that's ultimately, driving significant increases in terms of new customer acquisition. So it really starts foundationally with the operations, that customer experience, and how are we driving, right, the best user experience that we possibly can. And most of that all happens outside of the digital landscape, right? And then we're using digital to amplify it. So for me, loyalty has started to really shift, and I think that's also really apparent in hospitality, in retail. What are people saying about us online versus, a loyalty app or even the offers that we're putting in front of them?
I mean, Chad, same thing. To your point, Jenna, we have an app that people come to. We have points that you can earn every single day at SHEIN. If you don't have it, please download the app. But beyond that, it's our, everyday comments that are on social media that we want to make sure that we're taking care of our customers. So, for us, loyalty extends beyond just, earning those points and having people come back. We know that with fashion that you can shop anywhere, but we want to make sure that people are taken care of. And so for us, that's where the loyalty is, that, every moment that you have and that consideration, you think of us. And so we want to make sure that from start to finish that you are taken care of.
Yeah, and one other point to add too is I think if it's also how you rectify when things don't go well, because not every transaction is going to be 100% all the time. That's just the reality of business. And so I think where you really build brand loyalty is your ability to handle that in a way that is satisfactory for the customer, whether that is a refund or that's just, I want to be heard because I'm mad and I want to yell at somebody, and having that empathetic aspect there, that they just feel seen and heard. That goes so long to dry. Like, they actually care about what I have to say. They took the time out to listen to me, and now I'm loyal to this brand because I feel like they care about me as a customer.
Alex, we're in a world of shrinking attention spans, increased price sensitivity. How do you think about creative ways to cut through that and build long-term customer engagement?
I think I already forgot what your question was. No, I'm joking. No, so the important part about it really is about thinking about what platform that you're on and making sure that you're creating content that makes the most sense. So, when we're thinking about shrinking attention span, you're on TikTok because you want just fun and entertainment and to kind of lose yourself. And so when you're creating content for that purpose, that's what you should be doing. So in order to really kind of engage your consumer, you really need to be thinking about that's why they're there. And in order to capture that attention, make sure that you're not just putting some sort of 15-second ad on TikTok and thinking that people are going to enjoy it. So if you really want to make sure that you're capturing their attention span, make sure that you're thinking as that person. And if you're scrolling, that's what you're looking for.
And quickly to build off of that, I think, Jonathan, you said it yesterday, it was 70, 20, 10 in terms of like 10% of the budget going to emerging channels. But I think oftentimes on the brand side, we have a very refined budget. We're not going to give agencies more money. Creative. And I think we do a poor job on the client side in ensuring that we're investing in creative, and when we attack those emerging channels, that we have the best assets. So I think, that's a big takeaway, a call to action is saying, as we go after those emerging channels, as we try to break through the clutter, are we invested in the creative piece? Because again, the media is going to fail if all those other things are not, put together given their time. And so I think, for me, that's just really impactful in the takeaway. And my company personally, our creative's terrible. I will say that on record. It's a huge step that we need to take to kind of break through that clutter, and so.
Yeah, and to continue to build on that train of thought, we aren't great. We don't have the bandwidth to do TikTok well. We just don't. Like, that's the reality of where we're at, right? But there are so many people who have cracked the code of TikTok. They're called influencers, or, these content creators. And there are so many people out there that are already fans of your brand who do TikTok well. And maybe they have a micro following in TikTok, Instagram, insert channel here. But find those people that are creating the content and are already brand fans, brand loyalists. Let them talk about you on your behalf. One, it's more authentic to the people that are receiving that message because it's coming from a trusted source and not necessarily from a brand. Utilize Spark ads we talked about yesterday, or those Instagram boosted posts. Get tagged in, put your media dollars behind, and there's your creative right there, and it doesn't cost you anything to do that. Maybe, for us, we did a campaign with emerging artists, and we were the official sponsor of opening acts because every band that goes on tour starts out staying at Motel 6. And so how could we support these bands going on tour? And we gave them 10 free room nights for a piece of social content, which didn't cost us anything, a couple $100 in hotels, but we got these great, really authentic pieces of content from these bands who are creators in their own right that have these loyal followings. Just boosted those up. They like it because we're promoting their band. We like it because they're promoting our brand. And it becomes this really synergistic relationship between these people that like your brand and can defend on your behalf. So you don't have to step into the conversation as a brand, but drives that loyalty, drives that engagement, and drives that meaningful connection.
How do you both think about influencers and loyalty?
Oh, it's the most important thing that you can have, because in a world right now, nobody wants to sit there and listen to a brand talk about themselves. I mean, it's so important to have influencers because it's the best way to understand who brands are, because it's not just yourself. It's identifying with people that are like yourself. So especially in the fashion space, it's an ability to see other people who have similar body types that you are, and you can then get different inspiration. So it allows that creativity and sparks loyalty, and other people then get inspired. So it's not just important, it's kind of the only way to, you know, have content out there.
In the home service space, it's difficult, especially in the franchise space. When we think about influencers, you know, as a brand, we can't afford the Chip and Joanna Gaines of the world, right? They can get out on HGTV. So when we think about influencers and the like, it's really neighbor by neighbor, right? How do we really create that word of mouth? How do we create a customer experience that person is that micro influencer and they're telling their neighbors? So, you know, from an industry perspective, things are definitely a little different, but we're just constantly trying to drive that in-person experience to ultimately drive new customer acquisition.
I would say that influencers come in different forms. I mean, for you, maybe not everybody is taking a photo of maybe their drain pipes after they're fixed, but that doesn't mean that there aren't Facebook groups out there that aren't sharing information about how great the services are. So don't always think about it in the traditional sense of like somebody's taking a selfie because they're very happy with the services, but you know, influencers come in a wide variety.
And you need good, clean pipes to drain the data lake. So. Jen, I think most people in this room are comfortable demonstrating ROI on their performance media spend. When you get into the brand and loyalty space, showing the ROI is a little trickier. How do you kind of widen that lens and demonstrate the value of creating loyalty with your brand?
Yeah, it's really hard for us. If you were in my roundtable yesterday, I shared this stat, right? 60% of our business still walks into, or 57% still walks into the hotel every day without a reservation or is booking that same day. And about 30 to 40% is still paying in cash. So they're not booking online, they're not giving us an email, then they're paying in cash and we can't track them digitally. So when you look at this ecosystem of unable to just digital dark, I don't know what the term is, but we just don't have the ability to track them in that way. But when you have a brand like ours where we're at 90 plus, we found the one person who didn't know who Motel 6 was yesterday. Where is he? Right there. So we have 95% brand awareness, and that's not what we're trying to solve. What we're trying to solve for is consideration and preference. And so when you get down to these other metrics, it's how do you build that engagement? And Motel 6 has always been known as a value brand, but when we went through our brand refresh a couple years ago, we knew we needed to be a brand with values in addition to a brand with value, right? And so how do we have that shared value set with our customers to bring them and get them to care about what we have to say by building engaging stories and this content that they can resonate with, that says they can see themselves in, and finding that single human truth of, I like my pet is part of my family, and then build that in a way that makes sense for us, but is a universal human truth. So you can do sort of this mass scale, but make it feel individualistic because you're talking to that person about that one thing that they care about. And to answer your question, how to track it, taking a step back and looking at not only the brand health metrics, or just the performance metrics, but also brand health metrics. Are you seeing increases in preference and consideration and awareness? Are you looking at, if you've got, $100,000, $200,000 to spend and you want to do a full marketing mix model, taking that back and looking at that holistic customer journey. And then on top of that too, I think we look at NPS score. I'm sure any brand in here with franchisees sends out the would you recommend our brand, right? That survey. But one stat that came up recently that I think is really interesting to start looking at is net retention rate. So what is the percentage of your guests that are utilizing, or your customers that are coming back again and again? And if it's not great, there's something broken in the system. It is much cheaper to get these folks to come back again than try to find and acquire a new customer. So making sure that you're looking at the holistic picture. Where are people dropping off? How can you break that gap and then retain those guests versus always constantly having to spend your budget to go find somebody new?
For sure. Do not chase after somebody new. Try to fix it and retain that person. It is cheaper in the long run.
Chaz, one of your brands is Mosquito Joe's. I imagine that a Mosquito Joe's campaign in Chicago in March looks a lot different than one in New Orleans, where there are probably a lot more mosquitoes. How do you get into customizing campaigns to account for regionality and local difference?
Yeah, it's a ton of work. You probably noticed there are a few mosquitoes around. If you've been walking the streets, I don't personally get bit, but my family gets eaten alive. But that being said, we tend to take the road less traveled, right? We have to localize every single campaign. We have to trade efficiencies for, shameless plug for my roundtable coming up, right? The art of media buying and planning. We have, for any given brand, Mosquito Joe in particular, 60 to 70 different local offer messages running across the country. And if you're from the Northeast, ticks are huge, right? So we have things very, very targeted to ticks over certain months. And, here in New Orleans, Texas, I don't know, maybe you can get a tick. I'm not sure, but yeah, we're constantly trying to iterate. And then when we think about, right, the seasonal changes and the weather patterns, the QBRs are almost too infrequent, right? So annualized media planning is really out the door. So we're constantly week over week looking at a very hyper-local perspective, what is or isn't working. Just recently, we went through a whole BDI, CDI analysis, and we're really targeting, right, states and then even the local DMA levels to understand, okay, are people even aware of pest control in that area? And then how is that being impacted by loyalty, your Google reviews, your business profile ratings? And ultimately what we're seeing from a market-to-market perspective is a potential shift of 300% in terms of conversion rates, right? Where you have high brand indexes or low category indexes, and that's going to shift, right, your profitability significantly. So it really is having to peel like every piece of the onion back and going hyper local. More emphasis on the agencies, right? More emphasis on the internal teams to have that constant communication. And it feels a little bit more old school, right? Then give it all to Google and let AI kind of figure it out, because we do have to be so hyper local, market by market.
We talked a little bit about personalization. I come from a content background, and I think of the gold standard of personalization as the Spotify Wrapped review that we get every December. And I think about kind of like that model applied to, I think it was Grubhub, but like how many burritos I've eaten this year, and it was just like not nearly as exciting and interesting. So how do we think about personalization? What is too personal? When do we not need to personalize as much? And what are some of the kind of ways that we can kind of stand out with personalization?
I mean, everything can be too personal, especially in the world of social media. I think that a lot of people want to find their own kind of niche audience and kind of feel that they're seen and heard, but they also kind of want to fade a little bit into the background. I think that people really want to be inspired, and so for us, when we really are thinking about developing content, we really want to make sure that it's specific to the channels and really thinking through our audience. So like I was saying earlier, we want to make sure that like when we're on TikTok, we're really trying to make sure that it's all about fun and entertainment, and when we're on Instagram, it's really about product first and really making sure that people kind of see a sense of themselves. And then when we're on Facebook, it really is kind of really about that community building. So as we're developing our content, we really want to make sure that our audience kind of feels across all of the platforms that there is a reflection of themselves. And so kind of that personalization kind of comes through. And so we take a look at the data and see what people are engaging with and make sure that we keep delivering on it. But I think that there are so many ways that you can use too much data to kind of get a little bit too granular of what people are looking for and shopping for. I think we all kind of notice that when you get ads, you're talking about something, and then all of a sudden you get that ad on your phone and you're like, why am I being listened to right now? So I think that's where you get a little hesitant. So for us, we really want to make sure that we kind of think generally on our content creation of, this is what people are looking for, this is what we are using our data for in order to make sure that everybody feels part of the conversation, but we don't want to go too far into what we have access to and make people I guess scared that we are listening, because we are very protective of what we have access to.
I think it comes down to what is the value you're providing the consumer for that personalization, right? Because if I'm signed into ABC, my SHEIN account, right? Like, do I want them to remember my credit card information, my location, so I have one-click buying, and that's easier than, having to go enter all this stuff or go find my credit card when I'm going to make that purchase. And there's that trade-off value that I'm receiving a benefit by allowing you to take my data and utilize that to give me this more lived-in experience. Or even from a Weather Channel app on your phone, like my iPhone background is what the weather of where I am, and I'm giving that data and to have that personalization, and there's a relationship and a transaction there between the brands. So are you personalizing because it's a benefit to the customer? Are you personalizing because you think you should do it? Are you personalizing because, we're kind of crossing the line here and understanding what do they want from you and find that right relationship, whether that's preferences on I want this type of hotel room versus this type of hotel room, or, anything down to whatever Google knows about me, which is everything, right?
And I do think there's a frequency sweet spot for everybody. And I think gone are the days of how often do you want my brand to interact with me, right? AI, automation, like we should be able to build that hyper-personalization. Now the content piece and are we saying the right thing at the right time is going to be a constant endeavor. But I just think through what we just heard about Potbelly and how many emails are too many emails. And that immediately made me think about like Domino's. And it's like they spammed me every day and I unsubscribed. Yes, they're still top of mind, but again, there are certain cues that AI and automation and the technology that we're implementing now can help really create a seamless process so that we're there when they need us, but we're not necessarily there when they don't want to hear from us.
Yeah, because you're annoyed. Yeah, right, exactly. It's like that's the thing we want to do is make sure we're providing the value, to your point. Are you there when I want you to be there? Are you giving me the access I want when I want it? And how do you make my life easier only when I ask for it, right?
Exactly, because it's not just one brand, it's everybody all of the time.
Yep.
All right, we're coming up on probably our last question here. I used to work in the sports space, and I would attend conferences with high school football coaches, and they would bring speakers on stage, famous NFL coaches, famous college football coaches, who would give these talks about motivation and culture and inspiration, all very high-level stuff. And then I would ask the coaches who attended the conference, like, what did you learn? Like, what was your biggest takeaway? And it was like, inevitably, some small little side room session where they learned one play, one defensive front, one piece of scheme that they can bring back to their school to run in their playbook. And so I ask each of you, starting with Jenna, what is one play from your playbook that you would recommend people try, test, don't test? What's one actionable, tangible takeaway you would give people?
I already kind of said it earlier. So, I think it's fine. It's not always about massive, optimizations and these huge different parts and pieces. Like, where can you microly optimize to make things just a little bit better and continue to build on that? We don't have to solve the world's problems and boil the ocean in every decision that we make, but how can you kind of find those ability or those micro areas to influence? And for us, it was, we don't have the money to make all this video content. So working with influencers, it was a lot more manpower. It was harder. It took a lot more team time, but from a budgetary standpoint, it was much more efficient. So in that slight optimization of being able to do that, we could produce, 25 pieces of content versus one brand video we stuck on TikTok or Instagram.
Yeah, I would say surprise and delight. So we spend so much of our time focused on where the big dollars are going and driving the media, and then we forget the experiential side of things. And so how are we, surprising and delighting the customer in person, pop-ups from a retail perspective, right? We're creating an environment or something that they then want to create that UGC. They want to leave that review. We can't necessarily do that through just, pure digital advertising, but I think being able to take a step back and think about the in-person, the market-by-market customer experience is just a huge takeaway, and my hope is that as an industry, we start to get back to a little bit of that old school and kind of breaking through all the digital clutter.
For me, it's listen. Your customers will tell you exactly what they want. You can just go look at your comments or check your DMs, and they will tell you specifically like where they want the pop-ups to be, if your packages are not being delivered fast enough, or if they have any sort of issues with anything. You know, sometimes it's bad feedback, sometimes it's great feedback. But if you really want to know what's happening, just go check your Instagram, and they will tell you exactly what you need to know.
All right, Jenna, Chaz, Alex, y'all were fantastic. Stephen, you said the dreaded data lake word. Unfortunately, I will never have you back on this room. Questions over here.
Good morning, Shantae Joseph with MP Digital. This is not quite a digital thing, but I think it relates to a lot of what we're facing with privacy policies and things like that. I recently went to Zara. They no longer print receipts. You're forced to give your cell phone number if you would like a proof of purchase now. We all know as marketers that there are more stringent and compliance rules now when it comes to privacy policies and the things we can make kind of consumers give us and capture. Do you think there's going to be more of a shift based off what I just shared to companies finding a loophole around these things, or do you think we are all going to kind of see that the requirements and the policies will become more stringent?
If I had a crystal ball, I think it's going to continue to get more stringent. I think there's going to be more regulation around it. And I think that from a brand safety standpoint, abide by the laws and don't try to find the loopholes, because those things do come back, and there are, you know, lack of a better term, trolls out there that are looking for companies that are violating these types of things in order to make a quick buck. And they will come after you for things like that. So in a general rule, from a legality standpoint, you know, find the most stringent requirements of the different places that you operate, because countries also have different regulatory laws. Canada, as an instance, is a double opt-in for every piece of marketing communication. So find that piece of where you're going to and build to that most stringent. And just from a brand safety standpoint, safety first.
Is this on? Yes. Should I drop a beat? Okay. To build a little bit on what you were saying, I have a question. Well, first I want to make a statement, and thank you guys for all the conversation. But the world, I'm Brad Nealon. I work with McAfee, but I think I've invested about $8 billion with Google over the years, and I don't know, I do everything when it comes to performance marketing and media. My question is a little bit more existential. So the world's become intrinsically untrustable, and I think everyone has a sense of, just a few that I wrote down, consumer fatigue. There's attrition in terms of how people, you know, think about loyalty. There's decision fatigue, and there's a crisis of trust everywhere. So everything you guys have outlined is marketing, right? So as marketers, is there any way to quantify the impact of these things for the financial overlords, so that as we really try to think of the voice of customers, think of yourselves, is that something that's imminent, and is that a advisable way to develop KPI? Because the more, you guys were talking about this a little bit, if everybody's trying to get phone numbers, loyalty programs, you know, at what point does it just become absolutely too much and it becomes a burden on the customers you're looking to serve? And that's not a challenge, it's a statement about providing financial KPI that enough is enough.
I would argue it's already too much.
Yeah, we're living in it right now.
Fatigued already. So I think it's an interesting question, right? Because it comes back to, and we talked about this a little bit yesterday, there's always a pendulum between put all the money in brand, put all the money in performance, and we swing back and forth, and we've not really found this right sort of balance of how to do both those things well. But our attention span is, 8 seconds? 87% of the content people consume online is video, right? I think what people are going online for is to have that escapism of the reality of the situation that they're in, and they just want to be entertained. And so at the end of the day, good quality content that gets people to engage with your brand, gives them a smile or makes them feel something, is going to have brand benefits. How to quantify it for the CFOs and the board members that are asking these things, because you can't just say, trust me, it's gonna work, right? You have to kind of pull those things back. And there's certainly brand health metrics and things that you can point to, but the people that I market to the most are not my customers, it's my C-suite and it's, the owners of the company, because I have to sell that in as a marketer and make them believe what's going on. I have to build that story, that marketing story for them. And so we have to educate them and get them to be bought in on this idea that building that emotional connection with the client, building that sort of trust factor, has long-term brand build benefits, and allow the flexibility and the trust to give you the runway to start seeing those results, because it's not going to be instantaneous, but as those results start coming up, being able to then take that data and tie it back and optimize from there. But there has to be an inherent trust with you and the people that are giving you the money to make those decisions, and they have to trust that you know what you're doing.
I think one of the greatest things that you just said is education. A lot of what we do, specifically what I do, is I explain a lot of metrics all of the time, specifically around engagement and what that looks like, because there are different types of engagement rates. It's not just about, likes. It's taking it a step further. It's very easy to like something and keep scrolling, but then it takes a little bit more to comment. It takes even more to share. It takes more to save. There are different types of levels of engagement that we take advantage of in order to explain how there is a consideration that will come down the line. It's not an immediate result. And so, the education factor is so important. So as you move forward as a marketer, especially in the world of social, is, you're kind of utilizing this as a billboard. And to your earlier point of, when is enough enough, we all, make choices. What is your preferred airline? What, loyalty program are you joining? Because we all kind of have those preferences. And so we're all kind of navigating this world together. And so when you think about it, you kind of take that kind of own personal preference. And then as you're going forward to your C-suite and you're explaining this, that's kind of how you kind of have to think about it as you're developing that content of, if I was a consumer, what do I want to see? And a lot of times when I challenge my team, when they present content to me, I'm like, do you like it? Would you engage with this? And if the answer is no, and I'm like, well, then don't post it, because that's kind of where we're adding to that noise. And so to your point, like, how do we get through it? Well, don't just add to the world of what we already know is kind of chaotic if it's not going to do anything for you personally, because you yourself are a consumer.
And I think, real quick, sorry. I think we are starting to see an evolution of the CMO transitioning into CEO roles, or that marketing-friendly CEO. So it's not all bottom line. People aren't just looking at loyalty now as a cost center that is actually cutting down on profitability because of offer messages. So we're not there yet, but I think we're starting to see it with some of the biggest companies across the country, and getting that marketing-friendly C-suite. So my hope is that we continue, right, to engage in that way.
You have time for one more question over here. Sorry, Tabitha.
Sorry. This is Melissa with USIM, EVP. Personal perspectives, what do you think the world of loyalty looks like a year from now, particularly where predictive analytics and AI are evolving at the speed of light? And internally, how does that change how your organization is structured across people, tech, and process?
I think personally it looks more cluttered. I think we still have to go farther before we start to take a step back, and I think everything with AI and automation is only going to make things worse before there are, potentially more lockdowns, or brands start to pull back because they start to see that churn, that unsubscribe, that, hey, I'd rather work with this other brand. So I think it does get worse before it gets better.
Yeah, and I'll take the internal piece. I think you need to hire for people that have the right attitude, the right ability to want to learn, people that want to grow and develop, and the people that are curious and interested about these types of things, because we can train skill sets all day long, and as we know, this industry is changing daily. So trying to find that right unicorn that has that one specific skill set for that one specific tactic is going to be obsolete by definition of change and evolving. So finding people that are curious, people that care, and people that want to learn and want to dig in here, that can adapt as these things are moving and are willing to learn that new skill set and pivot into some of these new creation of roles that we don't even imagine that exist today.
Jenna, Chaz, Alex, thank you guys so much. Stephen, you are a fantastic moderator. I joke a little bit.